Today, we're digging into one of the boldest, most famous heists in history, the Great Train Robbery of 1963. Seriously, it's a story that has it all. Brilliant planning, a massive haul of cash, and one tiny, almost comical mistake that brought the whole thing crashing down. It sounds like a joke, right? Like some kind of impossible riddle. But this wasn't a riddle. It was the simple, clever trick that kicked off the crime of the century. And we're going to show you exactly how they pulled it off. So let's set the scene. It's a dark night out on the British Railway. Everything seems totally normal. But a routine trip is about to take a very, very sharp turn. Okay, so picture this. You've got this Royal Mail train barreling through the countryside. Inside, there are about 72 postal workers just sorting mail like any other night. What they don't know is that in one of the carriages, there's a cargo way more valuable than just letters and packages. All of a sudden, a signal up ahead flashes red. Now, for a veteran driver like Jack Mills, this is just weird. It's an immediate red flag, no pun intended. That signal should have been green. He does what he's trained to do, he hits the brakes, and this massive train grinds to a halt, right in the middle of nowhere, without a clue that he's just stopped at the exact X on a robber's treasure map. So how in the world did a gang of thieves know exactly where and when to stop this train? Well, to get that, we've got to rewind a bit and look at the incredible planning that went into this thing. And at the heart of it all is this guy, Bruce Reynolds. He's this smooth, ambitious criminal, but he wasn't a train robbery expert. What he did have was a golden ticket, a tip from a secret informant, someone buried deep inside the Royal Mail system. And to this day, nobody knows who that informant was. Now, Reynolds was smart. He knew he couldn't pull this off alone, so he does something pretty much unheard of. He gets his own crew to team up with a rival gang, the South Coast Raiders, who were the absolute pros when it came to train jobs. And they all agreed on one very important rule: no firearms. This was supposed to be a clean job.
So here's the first bit of magic from their insider. The high-value carriages on these trains, they're usually wired with all kinds of alarms. But their guy told them that on this specific night, an old reserve carriage was being used. And this one, no security, no alarms. It was basically a sitting duck.
And then came the second tip, which was even better. Because it was right after a big holiday weekend, the train wasn't carrying the usual amount of cash. Oh no, it was carrying almost 10 times the normal amount. We're talking over £2.5 million. This wasn't just a robbery anymore. This was the score of a lifetime. All right, the plan is locked in. The team is assembled. The train has been stopped. The robbery is on. I mean, just look at this timeline. The whole thing was just a whirlwind of criminal efficiency. From stopping the train to disappearing with the money, the whole operation was over and done in just 40 minutes. But, even the most perfect plan can hit a snag.
And they hit a big one. They'd brought along a retired train driver to move the engine for them, but he was totally stumped by the modern controls. It was nothing like the old trains he knew. So in a moment of sheer panic, the gang had to use the train's actual driver, Jack Mills, the man they had literally just knocked out, and force him to drive his own train to their ambush point.
Just let that number sink in. 2.5 tons. That's how much the money weighed. To get it off the train, the gang formed this human chain, stretching from the carriage down a steep embankment to their getaway truck, passing 120 heavy mail bags from one person to the next. It was an incredible feat of teamwork, all in the dead of night. So, they have the money, they've gotten away clean, it really looks like they've pulled off the perfect crime. But right then, as they're leaving, one of the robbers says something, a tiny little comment that would end up being their undoing. That's what one of them said to the postal workers they'd tied up. It was meant to be a simple threat, to buy them an extra half hour to escape. But what he actually did was give the police the single biggest clue of the entire investigation. So why was that so critical? Well, the police heard this and thought, okay, 30 minutes. They figured the gang must have a hideout somewhere within a 30-minute drive. And just like that, a massive nationwide search was shrunk down to a much, much smaller 50-kilometer radius. The clock was now officially ticking for the robbers. Meanwhile, the gang has no idea the net is closing in. They're all holed up at this place called Leatherslade Farm, divvying up the cash and having a massive celebration. And this is where we get that famous detail. They were so loaded, they started playing Monopoly using the actual stolen money. That little Monopoly game was fun while it lasted. But that feeling of being untouchable, that overconfidence, is exactly what was about to lead the police right to their doorstep. The gang had a police scanner, and when they heard how close the search was getting, they panicked. They did a quick, sloppy wipe down of the farmhouse to get rid of fingerprints and then paid some guy to burn the whole place to the ground to destroy any evidence. The problem? The guy took their money and just left. The farmhouse and everything in it was still standing. A suspicious neighbor eventually tipped off the police, who raided the farm. Inside, sure enough, they found the empty mailbags. But the real smoking gun, the thing that cracked the case wide open, was that Monopoly set. In their excitement to play and their rush to leave, the gang had left their fingerprints all over the game board, the cards, and the little game pieces. That board game was the final nail in the coffin. So, after all was said and done, what was the real legacy of this crime that totally captivated the public?
Well, the aftermath was huge. Thanks to those fingerprints, most of the gang got caught and handed these incredibly harsh 30-year prison sentences. But the insider, the person who started it all, never identified. And the money, most of that £2.5 million was never, ever seen again. The crime became so legendary that the site of the robbery, Bridego Bridge, is now officially called Train Robbers Bridge.
And you can't forget the real human toll here. The gang was proud of their no guns rule, but the driver, Jack Mills, was beaten during the robbery. He was so deeply traumatized by the whole thing that he could never go back to work. He died just 7 years later, forever haunted by that night. So you have this incredible feat of planning brought down by one stray comment and a board game. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is there actually such a thing as a perfect crime, or will there always be some small human mistake that gives the whole game away?